okay now. I
You
upgrade
are the
my
king.
situation. I upgrade.
Okay, we're on Facebook Live now. Let's start.
Yes. You see, when I say Jacques is okay, Narumon is cutting up. Tack, tack.
So let's start. Yes.
Let the small toke speak.
Okay, speak.
So maybe let the big toke mute his mic. No. So yes, welcome everybody for this second session of the webinar series on sea nomads and Western Austronesians. So today we are happy to welcome Professor Narumon Arunothai, who is from Chulalongkorn University and the Social Research Institute. She will be talking about Moken livelihoods in Thailand and natural resources conservation. We welcome also Wengki Ariando, who is a PhD fellow at Chulalongkorn University as well, who will be talking about natural resources conservation and management for the Bajau in Indonesia. And then Dr. Fabienne Galangau, who is working at the French Museum of Natural History, and we'll be talking about the challenge of doing a museum for a nomadic society that is the Moken. So last time we had the first very interesting session with Dr. Cynthia Shu and Jacques Ivanov to talk about the Orang Suku Laut and the Moken, and from a quite wide perspective of very entrenched cultural values and strategies on how these nomadic population deal with all the external forces, state making, borders, and all these historical and contemporary issues, and how they manage, what are the strategies they develop to maintain their identity through time. So today we'll go into a bit more specific issues dealing with resources, natural resources management, but also cultural heritage for these sea nomadic populations. So I will give the floor to Narumon for the first presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I'll share my slide. And good day, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about Chawle in Thailand and their livelihood, and touch a little bit on natural resource management. But then I think Wengki is going to get more in detail of natural resource management and co-management in Indonesia. So when we talk about sea people or sea nomads in Thailand, the general term that is used is Chawle or sea people. And if we look at the map, then we can find several Chawle villages in the southwestern part of Thailand along the Andaman coast. And then these are some of the examples of boats, villages, and houses, and I'll go into detail on that. So if we talk about population, the entire population of sea nomads in Thailand is about 12,000 or 13,000 right now. There are totally 43 villages in southern Thailand. But then again, these consist of Moken, Moklan, and Raklawoi. So we have 3 subgroups in Thailand. And Moken lived in the upper part of Andaman coast. There are 5 communities. The Moklan usually live along the coastal area and inland, and there are about 21 communities, and Uraklawoi about 17 communities, both on the island and on the sea coast. And this is interesting, and I think Chuck covered this last time, the Moken in Thailand. We have about 1,000, but in Myanmar, there are about 2000 and then scattered along the Mugui archipelago. And the island where I did my study and also Jacques did his field research is near the border between Thai and Myanmar. And also there's the issue of border, the issue of nationality and citizenship. And Ajahn Supang, Dr. Supang will have a paper, a presentation in the 4th session on citizenship and nationality, which is the big issue, the biggest issue among the Moken. But again, with the Raklawoy and Moklan, there are some people who have been left out of this nationality. So the 3 groups of sea nomads have been in Thailand for a long time, over 100 years. But then not many people knew about them. Maybe the coastal people who live nearby may know them, but still there's the sense of looking down upon these people. And tsunami in 2004 is the event that brought Moken, Moklan, Raklawoy, the 3 groups, to the attention, actually the attention of the whole world, because a lot of international news agencies cover their stories. And then several news agencies also present their indigenous knowledge that enable them to escape the death from the tsunami. So we have the news like this. They saw signs in the waves, or they knew from water receded that they need to run to higher ground. And also the elder refer to the legend of 7 waves. So when they saw the water receded, they are reminded of the old legend that has been passed down. So they have maritime knowledge, they are indigenous group. And in the old days, they make temporary settlement on islands and along coastal areas, because along the Andaman coast, the monsoon effect is pretty harsh, rain and storm during the rainy season from May to October. So that's the season where they are more sedentary, not entirely sedentary, but then more settled in shacks or shelters in sheltered bays. But now, sadly, all groups are sedentary because of land and development policies. So in the Andaman coast, the tourism development is really progressing very fast. And maybe you also observe from the headlines that there are issues of land dispute between the sea people and development agencies. So at present, marine and maritime knowledge and skills remain significant in some communities. But again, if they do no longer fish or sail, then this knowledge is going to be gone. There's a study done, and then with the title, Reading the Water to Remember the Wind, Reading the Sky to Remember the Star. And the study has been conducted among the Raklawoy in Rawai Beach, Phuket. Rawai Beach is the community that is mostly affected by tourism development, and there's a strong dispute and even some blows of violence from time to time. Among the 3 groups, there are differences, not only in the part of linguistics, but also in rituals and stories and origin myth, also boat forms. So if we look at the boats of these 3 groups, we observe the differences. The kabang, the Moken kabang traditional boat is significant in that there's a curve at the bow and stern. And the knowledge of building boat is still there, but again, without passing down and without really practically doing it, the art of boat making will soon be gone. And then we see the boats of the Raklawoy and the Moklan. Traditional boats are almost gone. I think practically all gone. And the knowledge is only existed among really, really old generations, maybe really few people. This is how the Moken lived. Over 20 years ago, Surin Island Moken have 2 seasonal patterns. So during the dry season, they have nomadic life, travel in their small gabang, and then going from base to base and islands to islands during the northeast monsoon season, and then temporary shelters during southwest monsoon season. So that was over 20 years ago, and gradually with the prohibition of cutting large tree, taking log from the forest, then they cannot build the gabang anymore. So this was the photo taken inside the gabang, the boat with the unique shape. It forms significant Moken cultural identity. And like I mentioned, it's gradually forgotten. And I think Jacques mentioned many times that even without the boat, the Moken still have their identity. They'll still adhere to their marine life. But still, I am still in doubt whether the marine skill and indigenous knowledge would last, without them being mobile, going from place to place. So that's probably the last gabang on Surin Island. And you see that the stem, the salaka wood, was the characteristic of traditional gabang boat. The later style has been equipped with planks, which are more durable. With the salaka wood, they have to change every 6 months, but that coincides with their annual pattern that they get more stationary during 6 months during the rain season, where they have a lot of chance to fix and repair their boat. So these are the boat making knowledge, cutting the log from the forest, dragging down, and then widening the side. So I'm afraid that the knowledge will be gone without allowing these people to continue with this art. Several Moken still use their fish spear at low tide in shallow water. So we can find fish spear in all the households. They still use that. And women still went out to gather at low tide. This is how they fetch sea urchins along reef flat. So it's when the tide is down, the village became really lively because people go out and then they enjoy their gathering activities. For only Surin Island consisted of 5 islands. We can count 130 names. So these place names has the indigenous knowledge and the marine skills hidden in all these names. And again, the younger generations don't remember many names. So by and by, these nooks and crannies of the islands have been gradually forgotten.
Ajahn, what does Yanat mean? Yanat.
Yanat is pineapple. Pineapple. So it's also the dialect, the term used in southern Thailand, and the Moken also use this as in their language.
Which means that they have plenty of pineapple in those areas.
The story is that they noticed some of the pineapples maybe washed on shore. Yeah, not so. Yeah, these are the names are significant in that there are the names like Baya means large rock. Otet Ban means like the flat rock. So instead of having the term like rocks, they have different categories, detailed categories of rocks, also on land, underwater, and between tides. And traditional livelihood is marine subsistence, of course, but then for centuries, they've been trading the marine products like pearls, green snail, top shell sea cucumbers, giant clams, edible birds' nests with outsiders, usually middlemen, firstly Malay and Chinese, and lately with Thai and Thai Chinese, especially in Ranong province. The Surin Island has been declared national park in 1981. So again, when we talk about Bang Kloi, the Gang Krachan National Park came after the Karen community. Surin Island is also declared after the Moken have this as their home. And this is also interesting that in the beginning, the park authority allowed seashell sales to tourists. So from 1986 to 1996, you can see the Moken. So each family brought, a basket of seashells to sell to tourists. So you can see that the conservation policies also changed through time. The ban has been in place since 1996. So the Moken could no longer sell seashells or collect seashells anymore. So they began to make handicrafts. In the earlier time, the pandanus baskets and boxes were large because they put their cloth and their belongings in. But then when it turns into tourist item, they have to make it smaller for tourists to carry. And also the kabang has been transformed into model or miniature boat for tourists to buy as souvenir. For the three groups, they have been pretty much maintained their maritime or marine related rituals and ceremonies. And I think this is important in binding the community together and also affirming their identity as sea people. So the whole community, when it comes to the annual festival, they help preparing and organizing the rituals, preparing food and sweet and snack. And even friends and relatives from other communities also join in the celebration. I think the ritual also fall at the time of the change of monsoon, because for the Moken, it's usually organized during April. And for the Uraklawoi, during May and October, which is, the turn of the monsoon season. So it's just like reminding of the changing pattern of living, being really nomadic, traveling a lot, to being more sedentary, more sheltered in one area. Like I mentioned, rituals also create the sense of community, social bond, collectivity, and inclusivity. So everyone has been involved in this, even outsiders, and recently tourists usually join in and observe and take pictures. So there are roles of marine knowledge and skills in affirming food security, social ties, and this has been true to all the three groups. And the principle of sharing food is part of everyday lives in the three groups. That's why they have strong social tie and also emotional ties to the community. And we observe that even those who intermarry with Thai or outsiders usually bring people in instead of, having people to go out of the community. The Uraklawoi and the Moklan are probably the groups that have been integrated into Thai society. And you'll see that even the house style has been changed, from wooden house, high stilt house to glass house like this. This is in Phuket Island. And the children also enjoy, toys and other equipment, almost like urban children, and they enjoy eating. So even hawkers and vendors, when they go into Chaole village, they said that they have really good sale because the children enjoy this, and the parents willingly give them money to the children for buying food and toys. So this is the change that has been observed, change and modernization from smaller rowboat to a larger boat with motor, with outboard engine. And also small fish trap, bamboo trap and rattan trap turn into a more a large and more endurable traps like the photo show. With all this change, some communities, especially a school in Lipe Island where the main teacher is from the village herself, and she's really dedicated teacher as well as the medium between outsiders and communities. And also she is involved in helping with the land disputes cases. So she drafted up local knowledge curriculum. So there's knowledge class. And if you notice the mural of the classroom, it's depicting the origin myth or origin story of the people who come and then settle in Lipe Island. There's also effort like our project that try to revitalize culture by documenting place names and then significant points, so that many places where tourism development is unavoidable, at least tourists and outsiders could learn more about the indigenous people, the original inhabitants of the land. For example, this nature and culture trail, we did it together with the national park, pointing to several areas where the Moken make a living, cutting down leaves for their huts and boats. And this has become part of the livelihood for the Moken. So the Moken are really, really shy. They don't speak Thai well, and they don't feel confident. So it's not their nature to be expressive or assertive. So it took about 10 years for them to come up and become tour guide on the island. But still, the tourism development on the island as community-based is not supported by the national park or other authorities. So it's still a long way to go. So this is an example of the tour program that we try to encourage trekking and snorkeling with the Moken. So a group of international students come to learn about place names and then the Moken and how they have cultural attachment to several points on the island. With several partners in the network, we try to push for some policy change because, like you already know, indigenous issue has been neglected in Thailand, and the Moken, they've been looked down upon as backward, uneducated, and need to be developed. So we push successfully for cabinet resolution in 2004, and it's on revitalization of Chaole culture. It has been 10 years until this year. It's not so successful because each departments have their own law. For example, National Park, they said, oh, we can't allow people to make a living and settle down on our land because we need to protect the land and forest and sea for the whole Thailand, for the whole country. So how can we enhance this or upgrade it to be more powerful? This year, there's also an effort to draft a law on protecting and promoting ethnic groups' way of life. So not looking at the Moken, Moklan, Raklavoy, or Karen community only, but we are looking at the other ethnic groups that are facing similar situation in Thailand. And probably this is the ending part, that even though they have been marginalized during COVID, during crisis, they become the inspiration of the whole Thailand because Chaole communities, they have free time because they're not involved in tourism activities that much. So they go out to sea and they have dry their fish and they distribute their fish to other people, especially exchanging with the Karen and indigenous community in the northern part of Thailand. So there's a program called Exchanging of Fish and Rice. during this most difficult time during the semi-lockdown period. So I think we can see this as extension of community food security, food sharing between the communities that have been marginalized. Mountain communities, the Karen gave them rice, whereas the Chaole gave them dry fish. And this is the last slide from yesterday only. Probably some of you who follow the situation of Bangkloi, the Karen community, driven away from the land. The Chaole made dry fish, and then they drove up, several hours to Phetchaburi province, but then they have been prohibited by the National Park Authority to go. But then with request after request, they can go, but they cannot stay overnight. So we see this, despite their being marginalized, being the disadvantaged group, they inspire us with their maritime and marine skills and with their generosity. So I end my presentation here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Narumon.
Thank you.
I don't know, should we ask some few questions right now before going to the second presentation, or do we keep questions for afterward?
Well, maybe question now, so because after we might forget, no? Well, I don't know, it's up to you. You are the moderator.
Okay. Okay, Achan Supang has a question.
Yeah.
I think.
This is not to Ajahn Puk, but to all of us. Here in Thailand, we have the 3 subgroups, the Moken, Moklen, and Urakawoi. And the official generic term to call them is Chaole. I wonder whether the term Chaole sounds strange to non-Thai people, because when you call them the Pachao or the Moken, that's the indigenous name, but Chaole is an invented term, and to call them, I personally hesitant whether call them. I start with Moken, and then I found that this is not representative, so I put Chaole instead, because I think that can cover all the 3 groups. But Chaole seems a bit strange, and I wonder whether among those people they recognize themselves as Chaole or not. That's what I would like to learn from Ajahn Puk and all of us.
Maybe the situation in Thailand first. Earlier, before the tsunami, there's no distinction between Moken, Moklen, and Urakawoi. They've been called by the name either Chaole or Chao Nam, or most popular at the time, Thai Mai, which is New Thai. So, with them being looked down upon, there's another invented term, Thai Mai, which is like the New Thai. You have been upgraded to Thai. But after we knew them as Moken, Moklen, Urakawoi, now we started to use the ethnonym that they call themselves. But I think the popularity of the term Chaole is because they started to form a network because of their problems and because of their plight. That's why even the cabinet resolution used the term Chaole, and even their network call themselves Kreur Khai Chaole, Chaole Network. So they are proud together. It's the sense of togetherness as the sea people who have the knowledge of the sea, who face similar situation, who's now standing up and try to fight for their rights. So I think if we use the term Chaole, it's not so strange, because for themselves and at the policy level, the term Chaole has been used. But again, the term Chaole will cloud up the distinction among groups. So if we have specificity to call them some specific culture or language, then we should use the ethnonym.
Yeah.
Thank you. If anyone could add to that.
But bouncing back on what you just said, another question is, did Moken, Urakawoi, Moklen ever use the Chaole terminology and narrative to put up some policy change or these kind of things in order to be more to be stronger on the policy level as a larger group of people, or do they don't mind of I mean, do they either call themselves Chaole, or do they use this narrative for some policy level discussions or something?
Yes, they call themselves Chaole. Like I mentioned, the Chaole network, you know, the network that they form together. And with this network, they also become the part of the network of indigenous people in Thailand. So, you know, there are nested network that they belong to in order to push for their rights. And maybe if we look, I'm not sure, Wengki can clarify us, even the term Bajau, you know, there's some adjective after Bajau, right? Not only place name, but there are Bajau something. So maybe, yeah, more clarification.
Yes, thank you, Achan. Yeah, I think it's the same term in Indonesia. Like Indonesia, we have the Orang Laut and Bajau, but themselves they define their name based on the daily speak. Like in Bajau, they prefer to call as sama, it means the same. But the islander, like the people around there, call the specific name of them. Like in my study place right now, they call it Fadu. But in the national level, this group is famous with the Bajau name, Bajau or Baju. And the same in the Orang Laut in the Riau Island province. Some people call them as Orang Sampan, of both people. But themselves call their name as Orang Asli, or the origin people of that area.
Okay.
Shark resistant.
Yeah, but I'm afraid to be too loud. We say two things. For the Chaole, the name Chaole, they always accept that the people call them Chaole. This is not a bad name. This is the right translation of, let's say, Orang Laut or people of the sea or whatever you want. So, but I noticed in the beginning, my first field work, that they strongly oppose to be called Chaonam. They dislike it. So even if they agree that they can, this free population are all Chaole, Uraklawoi, Moken, they are all Chaole, and they accept the people of Thailand to be able to call them Chaole. They don't mind, because it's a way for them to be accepted in a category that will be integrated in the nation. But within the term itself, there is a big difference, and there was change between Taimai, which at beginning, at my beginning, Taimai was only for the Moken. That means the people who go most in the school, which are going to be sedentarized and have works and so on. This is the people which have been recognized by your king, I think, Rama V, but the other one, the real, I will say, Chaole, are the Moken, which are not the Taimai, on the Taimai way. It came later that the Chaole name fits for all the free population. And there is another thing, if you go deeper in the exchanges between Uraklawoi, Moken, and Moken, it's very difficult to find who is who. Because when they speak, they almost always refer all of them as Moken, except some Uraklawoi who sometimes refuse. But most of the time when I go to meet Uraklawoi, Moken, and Moken, they all call themselves Moken, like Chaole. If you want the term Moken is like the term Chaole, and it's well accepted among the Moken, that's for sure. And for the Uraklawoi, most of them, yes. And I even make a meeting with some, but I don't know exactly where they come from the Malaysia western coast. They know the name Moken, even if they don't know exactly who they are and where they are, but the name Moken somehow it's more than the society living in the Mergui archipelago. It's the Chaolais. Voilà. You can extend it. That's why I think Chaolais is more well accepted by the Moken. Chaonam is refused as well as it is refused in Moken, because we find last time with Maxime that the NGO who work in Lampi, the Moken themselves laugh at them because they said now we have the comment on dit, the orang the Moken of the sea. Voilà, you have the sea Moken and you have the
freshwater
sweet water Moken. That means they divide again that Chaonam, like sweet water, is bad. It means you lose tradition. You are not anymore at the sea. And when the people came in Surin in the beginning saying, oh, there is Chaonam, they was very hungry. So that was the first division. Another thing is, and I'm sorry to tell you that, but at the beginning, the first year, the people came when the Thai arrived in Surin, they say, you are Chaolais. And of course, the Moken will say, yes, we are Chaolais. So they tell me, you see, their name is Chaolais. So, you know, it's kind of a game between the dominant and the people who don't want to be visible to the dominant people who say yes to everything. So they accept very well this Chaolais, even if it's not their ethnonym. They refuse the Chaonam. And Chaolais is like being recognized as a Chauko. That means, it could be the people of the mountain, the people of the, you know, it's a geographical reference that the Thai can have in their mind. They are the people of the sea, so they have a place in the society, because sea with the Moken Thai mentality is not very well known. So it is a specification, Chaolais, which gives them some strength in the mentality of Thailand. Well, that's the first thing I wanted to start. And the second thing, and I will stop there because there is more, you are talking about the boat. And that's a boat, it's a question that will kill me, because since 2004, as you know, everything's changed. And I wanted you to be with me because I know things will change definitively. But the change that boats are, these traditional kabang boats are disappearing is not only due to the lack of wood or the forbidden national park forbid the Moken to cut a tree. It's happened in Burma. It's always has been forbidden to cut tree, but it's always possible to cut tree or to find a tree somewhere. There is more, in fact, there is more economic reason that basically that the resources are disappearing or there are less to collect. So there is less utility to go with family and extended family to collect the sea flower for seashell, sea slug. Or so. There is no more. For 20 years in Burma, there was no more. So there is no use to use boats, Moken traditional boats. They don't live on that. They live on the littoral more than on boat, and they go to for fishing. More or less like the Uratlaoi, they go for a time and for fishing for 3-4 days, and then they come back. So they don't live anymore in their boat. And the disappearance of the boat doesn't mean that the boat disappears of their mind. And even if they don't transmit by the way you are, I mean, showing the younger population how to make boat, I can guarantee you that every children can make a boat. A 7-year-old Moken is able to build a boat. Enfin, you know what I mean. I think the transmission is somewhere else than the practice, because it's very much involved in all of, it's interwoven in all of practice, technique, and mythology, song. So all these techniques to make a traditional boat are still alive, but in another way. That means Maxime and I will discover that with, it was very surprising that we find the small sampan, you know, the small boat of the kabang, but it was the sampan who have the notch out, not the big boat. And so that means this notch out, this notch boat, like the kabang was, is something symbolically who can go around in the society. It could be in a song, it could be the sampan, it could be drone, it could be a lot of things. That means everything is not so strict. And if the boat has to disappear, and I think it will, it doesn't endanger that's why I said it doesn't endanger the Moken, because they have to adapt, and they adapt for a century. And the boat was not there for centuries. So that means they change. They change according to economy, slavery, war, or whatever thing. So they don't have always a boat. If the boat has to be renewed and rebuilt, it will be because the resources will reappear, and that we will see. But there is a lot of things, but it's detailed between you and me.
I had a question for Narumon based on just like Jack told in the Lampi Marine National Park, we had this Moken narrative from people from the like 45 years old generation, telling about kind of segmentation between true Moken, like Moken Oken, so Moken from saltwater, and those from freshwater Moken, which was definitely kind of, I mean, down-looking way of talking to another kind of Moken, which is not so true Moken anymore. And this was definitely linked to the way young Moken interact or not with all these cultural valorization things, or interacting with the park activities and so forth. So my question was, did you notice or observe any similar segmentation process among the Moken in Surin, based on the way they interact or not with all these more modern way of lives?
You mean the Moken themselves, right? Not with the
Yes.
Mokland.
Yeah, within the Moken.
No, we don't observe such segmentation or distinguish between freshwater and the true Moken. No, just generational difference. That's it.
But they don't put name.
Yeah, but for instance, how do the older generation look at how young people dwells and live?
I think the adaptation that Chuck mentioned, it's more like forced adaptation. They don't have any choice. They need to adapt.
I agree. Yeah.
So that's why I propose that if they can have a chance to have locks to build the kabang, despite the decreasing stock of fish and marine animal, they can still travel to visit their relatives and to other islands.
I agree.
It's not only for livelihood alone, it's for social.
No, I agree with you, but we are working on that. You can come with the new group we are now, because we strongly want to work on this subject, is oppression and liberty. That means how the Moken, which have always been oppressed by dominance, slavery, war, you name it, you have it, they still have their freedom. That means you can find a Moken in the Navy themselves, in the base of the Navy military, and the village live within the military, and they have slavery, and they have this. Yes, there is an oppression almost every time, but this is not the contradictory to their liberty, because they have strategy which admit that they have a way to do their own life and to be free. So how do oppression somehow, it's a very sensitive subject, but how oppression somehow they swallow oppression and use it as a strength to be Moken themselves. And this operation, as a first thing, is sometimes they are obliged to change. I will tell you a last thing, that when we did this, map of the whole archipelago, we went in Chadiac and in St. Matthews, we did Maxime see it, I didn't see it. The boat, the monoxylum of the Moken boat, you see the notch, but it was, comment on dit bouché, Maxime?
He disappeared.
Closed.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, they closed. The military asked them to close it. So there is a piece of wood. There is a piece of wood with this insert in the mouth of the boat. So you can see that. Well, you see that? You can see directly when you ask them. They said yes. The military asked them, and you ask the military why you ask that you do that. They will say because now we are not a federal country. Everybody is the same. They don't have to be different than the other. Well, you go to Lampi, you will have another answer. And you go to Dung, where the people are with a missionary, you will have another answer. So this answer to it's the way of changing the boat and the symbolic of the boat, which is very clear here, is linked with the Moken in different way, and they can adapt the oppressive discourse that military said, now you have to stop your notch-out boat because we are not savage, everybody is the same, but they do it. The missionary will say, you are fishermen, you are not hunters, this is not good because your children to go to school, okay, stop. So oppression always have a technical reaction, of course. But it does not mean that the boat will disappear. If the boat has to reappear, it will reappear by itself and the Moken will make it. That's all. Let them do it. If the situation is good, yes, we can encourage what we do now. Give them land, trying to give them a place to go. If they want, you want them to have traditional boat, first they have place to go because for the moment there is few places where they can go. So first thing is to give them place and land and so on. But if the boat has to be another way, I think, and I'm quite sure of it, that the boat is almost finished. Now it's another story. Voilà. And it doesn't mean it disappears in their mind.
Okay, thank you. Are there other burning questions before? Okay, chance.
Yeah, thank you. Just to continue, but not too long. When I raised the issue of a name that they call themselves and name that other people call themselves, and Jacques raised the issue of oppression. I think that this may be the case of a particular country, and it may not be the same even in a single country. In Thailand, when we call them Chaule, and Ajahn Narumon said that they recognize that term and accept that
Yes.
with no bitterness, let's say. But think about other groups like the Chao Khao, you know, the mountainous people. The Chao Khao dislike the term. They do not recognize that. They said that they are Hmong or Yao or other groups. And due to the ignorance of the Thai state, they even include other people into the Chao Khao, no matter they are Hill people or not.
Yes, you're right.
They think that Karen is a group of Hill people, and they cannot understand that there are Karens who stay on lowland.
Yeah.
So even in a country, terms that the state want to give to a group, an ethnic group, may give a different reaction. And
yes,
this, if I can recall,
the Chao Khao is of course because first the Chao Khao they have a remembering of where they come from. So
yes,
they know they come from South China, so no, they are not the people of the hill and the people and so on and so on. So they have the memory, a geographical memory of their origin. So they are not the Moken.
Yeah.
And secondly, the Chao Khao, it's a large range of people. So all maybe 10 or dozen of people. And the Moken, the Chaole, no, you have more or less the same. Let we say Urak Lawoi, Moken and Moken. So being considered as a Chaole is acceptable. for them because they are the only one, and yes, and they don't know exactly where they come from, and it doesn't matter very much. So yes, why not? No, except this Chao Nam will they refuse. That water, that means Greenland. So the Chao Cow, it's another thing. Being on the Chao Cow means you are a lower population than the land, the lower land rice cultivator, of course. That all the dominant people in Southeast Asia have that in mind. You have the people of the plain who grow rice, and then you have the people of and then you have all the other.
Probably one interesting thing in that is that at least for as far as the Moken are concerned, they always play this card of situating them themselves lower than other population in order not to be bothered. I mean, not to be considered a threat or whatever, which is not necessarily the case from a hill population that that wouldn't accept this position of being lower than.
Just would like to add that when we study those ethnic people, ethnicity is very dynamic. Now we talk about ethnic Singaporean because they want to include the Malay and the Chinese and the Indians together. So they said this is ethnic Singaporean. That's what they are doing. So we do not need to keep to the traditional classification of ethnicity, and the Chao can be an example of how dynamic term can be.
Yeah, I do agree with you. And the ethnic, it's a term that I will suggest to work on it, because there is a few terms with links to segmentation of population because of the boundary, the border. You are in Malaysia as a marine nomad, you are no more a Moken because there is border, but in fact there's the same stock of population. So you know the border accentuate the ethnic difference. So ethnicity is much more important to discuss that indigenous people, which I don't like the term indigenous, because you can say indigenous for anything. Thai has been indigenous of the Chao Phraya. Who is the first to be there? Maybe there is prehistoric man in the Mergui archipelago before the Moken. Who knows? Nobody can say they are the indigenous of any place in the world. That for me a nonsense. We are all the same, and we are all human with our skin. So ethnicity is to be discussed and segmented. Yes, stop, finish.
No, the indigenous category has been created out of, I mean, from the situation of colonized countries, which is not the case of Southeast Asia, where you have both dominant.
Why ethnicity is more interesting to discuss that indigenous, because they.
Should we move to the second presentation from Wengki?
Yes.
Just before doing so, I welcome
Maxime. Sorry.
You welcome Maxime.
I want to ask a question to Narumon since a long time to discuss.
Fabienne, t'as disparu.
Raise your hand.
I raise my hand since the beginning, Maxime. Bad guy.
Qui est-ce qui m'a sucré là?
Go on.
Sorry, Narumon. I was really interesting by your presentation, and I wanted to have just a little bit more information about the one of the last slides you present about exchanging fish and rice between Moken, and so I think it's very interesting because it shows a change of direction, you know, of symbolic direction between groups of people. I don't know if you. I like the way they. I do not like, but I am interested to understand how it happened and you know what's behind this. Or can you be more explicit about this or your explanation? I don't hear.
Fabienne,
you don't have your microphone.
Unmute.
Yeah, thank you. The fish and rice exchange as what? Sorry, what's your question? I heard
my question was could you be a little bit more explicit about what happened during this exchanging of fish and rice? How did it happen?
Like I mentioned, they have been part of Indigenous People Network for some time already. So when they're facing with the crisis situation, now they think about what do they have, you know, as the strength. And we urban people, we cannot produce food. And during the crisis, we are really hard hit. But they saw that this is the strength. They have the fish, the Karen have the rice, and then they would like to have the social bond of exchange. So they just highlight their strength and then try to show the outsiders that they have kind of food security in their own terms, in their own sense, and the practice and the concept of food sharing is still very alive in their culture. So this is part of it, you know, just to show to outside world that although the indigenous, they're marginalized, they have their own strength that can only be observed in the crisis situation like this. So it's really a practical thing that they do, you know, exchanging food and fish. But again, it's also symbolic in the way that create
There is no toke in this exchange.
the lesson for outside.
Yeah,
Is there any toke
Thank you.
in this exchange? No.
Narumon Jacques wanted to know if there is any toke involved in the exchange.
No,
Nobody
that's why
hear
I
you.
think it's it's the main
don't
thing
hear
that
you.
without middlemen, and without
Okay.
without
It's just by
calculating
social
the
network.
cost.
All right.
But it's
Right.
social
A
network.
barter. Yeah, a barter
Yes,
system.
barter system.
Okay.
Sorry, it's through social network. They did it.
Right.
That's very interesting. Thank you very much. And yeah.
Okay.
Sorry for.
J'en ai marre de disparaître.
Just before going to Wengki's presentation, just wanted to welcome, I've seen that Kozolong had just joined. He was supposed to present on the Moken involvement.
Zoloun,
Moken involvement in natural resource conservation in the Miek archipelago, but currently Kozolong is in Miek, I think, with a very bad connection. So he will be in Yangon next week, so he will present next week about this subject.
If he's afraid next week he will be there for sure because we can switch.
Okay.
Today.
Hi.
Hello,
Kozolong.
everybody.
Hello.
Yes, good afternoon from Myanmar. Yes, I was in the field for about 2 weeks, so I was stuck in Miek. Internet connection was very bad there in this situation. So, but I arrived back today, so I'll give my presentation about the strengthen the collaborative management of natural resources for future of the Moken in Myanmar. This is my topic. I'll give that topic next week. Okay.
Okay. Very well.
Okay, yes.
It will be
Very
a
well.
good link with Wengki's presentation, I believe. So Wengki, if you're ready, I give you the floor right now.
Yeah, all right. I share my screen.
Ça se dit, I give you the floor. Maxime?
Hello, could you see my screen?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yes, clearly.
Oh,
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Maxime, for moderating this session. Today, I would like to present a small part of my current project of my PhD research. I'll talk about Indonesia in the context of the coastal marine and co-management system of the Bajau. So before I start to explain about what is the current situation of the co-management of the Bajau system in my research field, I would like to explain more about the current commitment of Indonesia about the customary coastal communities. There is some regulation that mention about the protection and recognition of customary coastal communities in Indonesia. In the first, like the Constitution of Indonesia, and followed by some laws that talk about the community and customary right, coastal zone and small islands, also the characteristic of coastal communities, and regional government commitment for the coastal communities, and also the community participation. And the end is the procedure how to recognize and protect the right of the coastal communities in Indonesia. So followed by the regulation, I would like to highlight this the big law that talk about the coastal communities in Indonesia. In this law, number 1, 2014, in these coastal communities in Indonesia divided into 3 categories. The first one is MHA, or customary law communities, that the government or the Indonesia, the local government give the right to this community as long as this community can fulfill the requirement. For example, like they have the ancestral domain of territories, they have a strong relationship with land, territories, and natural resource. They also need to have the customary governmental institution and also the customary legal arrangement in the customary territories in accordance with the statutory regulation. The second category is the traditional communities. Traditional communities is the community that have the right between 2 policies. For example, like in Indonesia, we have 1 traditional communities in the southern part of Indonesia that acknowledged by the Indonesian government and also the Australian government. So this community can have the right to fishing in the borderline, also the over the border of the Australian. And the last one is local communities. Local communities is the normal fishers in Indonesia. From these 3 categories, there is one group that missing, that cannot fulfill and they cannot categorize in this definition. They are the sea nomad or sea gypsies. And why the government cannot give the right to get this collective right? Because they are a landless group and they have the peripheral roles in the conservation practices. And also this group is not only the group that living in the one small place, but they are spreading across the countries. Like in my study case, I'll talk about Bajau. That Bajau is across from the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. So if we look the Indonesian sea nomads, we have 2 big group that located in Indonesia. The first one is orang laut or orang suku laut in the western part of Indonesia that spread into some province around here. And then the second one is the Bajau. The Bajau coming from some sources that talk about the origin of Bajau. But here, as you can see, mostly the big population of the sea nomads in Indonesia is Bajau people. And as you can see here, I put the symbol that Indonesia recognized 7 marine national park until 2022. And as you can see, from 4 marine national park is the home of the Bajau Indonesia. For example, like here in Wakatobi. And the population of the Bajau in Indonesia, the highest one is Southeast Sulawesi in here. And then they have the Wakatobi National Park here. It's quite interesting that I'll talk more in the next slide. So in the Wakatobi National Park, the Southeast Sulawesi province in Indonesia, in this location, they are the home of the 5 Bajau's village. The first is Mola here. The second one is Sampela, Lohua, and Mantigula, and Lamangau. Another interesting point here, in this national park, they also have 4 MHA. What is the MHA that I mentioned in the last 2 slides, the previous 2 slides? The MHA is the coastal community that get right from the government by the constitutional. So this community, this MHA community, get the collective right, and the government give the fully right for them to manage the natural resources using the traditional ecological knowledge. And in this national park, as you can see here, the government also already put the zonation and which zone that this group can do fishing or are they prohibited to do fishing. In this national park of the Wakatobi, as you can see, this location as the marine conservation area since 1996, and in 2002 it became the Marine National Park, and also nominated as one of the least World Heritage Site in 2005. And then it's located in the Coral City Eye, Coral Triangle Initiative. And in 2022, last year, the Indonesian government put this location, this national park, become the priority of tourism attraction, or the term we call is a new Bali. And in this location, 98% are small-scale fisheries, with the bajau fishermen is up to 80% of the small-scale fishers. And currently, last 3 months, the government of Wakatobi put the new decree about the sustainable small-scale fisheries, number 62 year 2020. But in this decree, the government didn't mention about the bajau and the recognition of the bajau. And what I observed until now, the government state this bajau is like a normal fisherman. This is what interesting point that I would like to highlight in this presentation. And regarding to the co-management system of bajau, there is some finding that I work until now after 4 months working in the bajau community. There is some, actually in Bajau Sampila, one of the village in my location, they have the term of the no-take zone, the tuba di katatuang. Actually, it's kind of the co-management practice, co-management system between the bajau people and also with the operation of Wallacea, if you know the Opwol. So the Opwol comes to this location since 1998. In this location, they try to do the co-management with the bajau. They call it tuba di katatuang. Tuba di katatuang means the lovely reef, coral reef. And then in this co-management, it's run from the 2002 until 2005. But in the end, this co-management system, like the no-take zone system in Bajau and with the NGO, like Operation of Wallacea, couldn't long last because of the budget system and also the conflict between the Bajau with the MHA in the location. So MHA in this term is the Barata Kahidupa, who control all the management. So the MHA people say that the Bajau, they don't have the location, they don't have the marine territory. So if you want to talk about, if you want to work about the no-take zone, you should work with the MHA, not with the Bajau. And then in the end, the Bajau in Sampela gave up, and then they give it to the MHAC. The second one is this is the Bajau Floating Museum in Mola, in Bajau Mola in Wakatobi. I could say it's not the co-management program because the government this project belong to the government. So the government in 2002 put the billion of Indonesian rupiahs to make this to build this Bajau Floating Museum. But this museum only ran from 2002 until 2005 because of they didn't encourage, they didn't put the Bajau in the process, in the design process, and also in the management process. So the third one is how to see the mangrove plantation, and this project is belong to the national park, the Wakatobi National Park, where they force Bajau people to do the plantation, to reboisation for planting the mangrove. But in this project, they just use the guideline based on the national park guideline. So actually, in this term, the Bajau have their own term, have their own practice, how to plant and which part and which area of marine that could be planted as the mangrove forest. But in this context, it's kind of a failed practice at co-management between the Bajau and the national park. Followed by the fishers community empowerment. So actually, it's a big problem in the Bajau community in Wakatobi right now, where the government put the Bajau in a group. So I mean the government give the fund for the people, or for the Bajau people to run their business, also, or like the aquaculture, to buy the boat and to buy the fish net or something like that. But the government give them in a group. And as you can know, the Bajau, they don't have experience to working in a group because the kind of the cultural belief that they should work in the nuclear family, especially in fishing fishing activities. In this term, also could be said as a failed co-management, where the bajau, and after getting the fund, and then they sell the product to the others to get more income. So until now, some NGOs also still working on it, how to fix and how to incorporate bajau in the term of their working as a group. And next is the change, the value chain of marine product. Since bajau in Wakatobi known as the central of fisheries in the Wakatobi, there is the practice that Jack and Achan Narumon mentioned about the toke, where the toke, the middlemen, have roles in cuttings, and buying the marine product from the bajau with the low price, and then they sell the high price. And sadly, I would say destructive fishing in bajau in Wakatobi is still ongoing right now. They still use the fish bombing in some occasion. Also, they still use the fish poison, like using the natural product and also the chemical one. And also, they still not realize the importance of the not throwing the debris or the garbage into the sea. They still do practice the marine debris when all of the domestic garbage, they just throw it to the water. And since the government of Wakatobi state that they would like to put the Wakatobi as the national priority attraction of the tourism, so they will say that the bajau fillet will become the identity of this national park or this regency, the Wakatobi National Park. They say that they will attract the tourists to come to the bajau fillet to get more income, and then sell and put the bajau as as the dolls in their house to get more income for the government. So what is obstacles in the common management system of bajau Indonesia that I observed until now? There is some intercultural relation between the bajau themselves and the customary coastal communities that got the right, the constitutional right from the government. And also the term of the conservation and protected areas, where mostly the co-management program in Indonesia always force the community to work and to put more the protected area. They forget to think about the socio-cultural system of this community, especially in bajau. And we should encourage the traditional knowledge as well, how to document the traditional knowledge of the bajau into the practice of the conservation and also the protected area targeted by the government. And also the political situation is really matters, that I could see the situation in the regency of the local levels, where the government, if the region of this government, they will reshuffle all of the local leaders, all of the head of department based on their team or their party. And also the organization interest. I could see here the common management system from the NGOs and also some donors and some fund. There's some fund that's going to the bajau. They will arrange all of the needs based on their mission. So they don't discover, they don't encourage all of the problem from the bottom up problem of the bajau, but they just put it as the need of the organization. And also, of course, religious issue, it matters because of the 100% of bajau in this area is Islam, and then since they have this religious with them in the community, they try to decrease all of the cultural belief, because it's in the holy book is prohibited to do this and those. And what some kind of some point that I need to consider if I want to develop the models on co-management in Bajau Kaltobi that will put back the cultural identity, how the history, and also how to engage this community into the identity. As if we are lucky, if we can propose this the Bajau to get the right by the constitution, from the government, local government, or maybe from the national government. And also we need to document the Bajau traditional knowledge, what kind of the knowledge that they have, and also the socio-cultural relation between Bajau and the non-Bajau. And we need to emphasize on the sharing of the common needs of the Bajau in the 21st century. And then in the end, of course, yes, if we want to work with the common management, we need to concern about the consultation, prior and informed consent about what they need. And this is what I'm still developing this kind of models. Actually, this is one of my research outcome of my PhD, that how to include the model that I need to consider the TEK, the Bajau traditional ecological knowledge, and also the common management practice in the LNA, and in the end also need to consider the institutional support and policy development. And as the TEK, some practices that is some belief from the Berkeley 1993 and in sacred areas as well. And then I try to refine it into some details that what kind of the Bajau TEK practice, including conservation and practice, ritual and belief, traditional fishing method, customary laws, navigation, forecasting, and adaptive management. And it might be another point that I could find in the field until now. And in the end, it's become a co-management system of the Bajau, and maybe it could be useful for the regional issues. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Are there some questions straight ahead?
Yes, I would like to know if there is any representative in the government level for the Bajau. You hear me? No. Pourquoi vous m'entendez?
Oui, on t'entend.
Mais pas très bien, tu peux redire?
Mais je sais pas, il y a un truc qui va pas, ça coupe tout le temps.
Jack was asking
il y a marqué muet. Mais non, mais il monte, il descend le.
Okay, Jack was asking if there are any government representation of Bajau.
Je pense que j'ai plus de batterie dans l'ordinateur, la souris marche plus et je lui montre. Voilà, merci.
Attends, redis-le, Maxime, parce que moi je suis complètement sourde. I didn't hear, personnellement.
Jack was asking if there is any government level representatives of the Bajau community.
Actually, last 5 years, the last election of the local representative in the politics, that there is like, as I observed, there is two people from the Bajau, or the Bajau Mola. But in the practice, these two people, it becomes like they contradict action and policy that they make.
Yes,
because actually, these two people is influenced by another big political situation. So once they are Bajau, that the big party that they belong to try to figure out and then try to drive them to another policy. Yes. So what I heard from the local committees, they said that even though they have the representative in the politics, there is no impact for them to increase.
Yeah, but you have to have a start. The start of this relation with the government. We know what it's done. It's nothing. But you have to have a start, and maybe I don't know for how long they have been in place. These two Bajau people.
Yes, only years? 5 years. 5 years.
5 years.
The last election in 2019.
And sometimes they go back to the community and get some feedback. No.
Actually, they just have a mixed blood. Because, the real Bajau, from my 5 villages, the highest education of them until now is just graduated 2 years ago from the university, as you can see. In some village, like in Lohoa and also in Lamangau, the highest education of their kids is still in the high school.
Yeah.
So it's become a problem in Bakatobi right now because
the problem with the co-management, like you call it,
course.
is you have to be to have a co. It could be an NGO, it could be a
Yes,
representative of the government or representative of the village. So
sure.
everybody is always looking for somebody to talk with it, and that's the first mistake. It's not the one who you have to speak to the community, and then somebody has to speak for the community. So this person, which is at the government level, should be aware of that. But of course, we all know that they are not aware of that. But maybe it's this point you have to work, and we have to work too. Because, for instance, in Myanmar, the Moken are recognized as a population, so they can have a representative as well. So if you work well with the first step of this representation at whatever happened in Myanmar, who knows? But it's the very beginning of the interaction between government and this littoral population. You have to act at what I think. And force them, if they have to be forced with the community, work with the community, or ask the community to go with them, or I don't know how it works in Indonesia. But that's what I will do. If you have two of them, they have to bring the message and to be the carrier. But of course, they have a lot of pressure. They are Bajau in a way, and then they have to be Indonesian in another way. So I think they avoid their whole responsibility. Voilà.
Yes, thank you, Jake.
So the co-management is a well big thing. It's a good thing. There's nothing to say, but it's very difficult to put in place.
I have more general question about you were talking about the legal framework in Indonesia was a recognized customary
coastal communities.
Yeah, traditional ones and local communities. Could you give a bit more details of why Bajau are not included in one of these three categories? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Musim. I think the big reason is about the land definition from the government of Indonesia. So the state that the territory is only the one who have a border on the land. So when we talk about these three categories, Bajau people cannot fulfill this because they don't have land. Even though like now in Indonesia, they live in the coastal line, but they don't have right to manage this area because it's belong to another group, another MHA, or maybe another dominant group in this region. And the closest one is it should be MHA. The Bajau could become MHA, but they cannot fulfill only the territories which have land as territories. But I think it's a big problem at Indonesia, which as I talked with some people from the Ministry of Fisheries and Marines, they say that they are thinking about this and then try to input in the next revision of this the policy. So my research, I hope it could contribute to this the legal framework to give the evidence that the Bajau have this kind of the territories and they have the knowledge that we need to put in the definition.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very interesting because until very recently in the military coup in Myanmar, the big question was there was a lot of views about how to recognize customary managed system throughout Myanmar. And of course, it's majority for land-dwelling societies and communities. But the Indonesian framework is always put as an example in Myanmar on how to recognize customary land administration and management. But I mean, your research points out a lot of shortcomings. And with Jacques, we have been a lot advocating on the fact that Even though we call the Moken sea gypsies, they are in fact island people before all. I mean, they have their own mother islands. They recognize land as part of their territory as much
cemetery, mountains.
as the sea. So we are also advocating on these points to avoid exactly the same shortcomings you underline in Indonesia for the Bajau. Thank you. Are there other questions for Wengki?
Wengki, if I ask you straight
Supong,
away,
she wanted to ask a question. Supong was asking a question.
Yes.
We
yes.
wanted to ask, before Jacques.
Pourquoi?
Parce qu'elle a demandé avant toi.
Thank you, thank you. I would like to ask about the historical route of migration of the Bajau. In the map that you show us, it seems that they are not on the main route of the Malacca Strait, but they have turned left to the north, no, turn right to the south, right? How would you explain that? They were on the main route, and because they were ethnic minority, so they try to find some faraway place that they can live, or because they were brought by tin miners, or any reasons that they happen to be there in Sulawesi, right?
Yes, thank you, Achan Supang. Honestly,
share the map. Please share the map.
It's actually, yes, it's actually one of the obstacle of my research, that how to see the originality of the Bajau people. So wait a moment. There is some version that talk about the original of the Bajau. The first version say that the Bajau actually is the one group with the orang suku laut. They came from the Malays kingdom, the Sultanate in the Malays, and it's proved by the orang suku laut when I went there in 2018. But some version of Bajau said that they come from the Philippines, the Sulu Sultanate. But until now, when I work in this community, there is no like a well explanation that say that where they are coming from. They just know that in this location, the elders said that they used to the original of them is from the Mantigula. The Mantigula is like the oldest Bajau village here, but in 1959, post the Independence Day of Indonesia, there is like one Islamic movement that tried to attract more militaries, more armies from the local people. So on that time, the Bajau people from Antigua, because they were afraid with this movement, so they spill, then they fight, and they scatter into another place. Like from the Mantigula, they moved to Mola, they moved to Sampela, and other place in this region. And until now, I'm still looking for the well explanation that where they are coming from, especially from Bajau people.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I?
Hopefully, we may have some hints hopefully we may have some hints on these migration patterns from
yes, that's the main.
Before Starter's presentation,
and Benjamin.
And Benjamin, yeah. And the next section.
Yes, it's what I want to say. For me, one of the main focus of this webinar is to give some clue to where do these all marine nomads came from and how do they spread, if we can do that. And in between, you have this suku, orang suku. Just always, I have seen them also. I went there, but I did not know that they were suku at that time. And so I've seen the suku, and then when I heard the chu, I've seen them, I saw a lot of resemblance with the Moken. Then I had been in Indonesia talking with Indonesian, not with Bajau, Indonesians talking about Bajau. They speak like they were speaking to Moken, the same. They speak to Bajau like they were Moken. It was exactly, you can invert the term Bajau and Moken, it will be the same. And so I will ask just a straight question to help for this migration out of Taiwan position and so on. Nobody knows very well because the hard evidence are very not very strong. So we have to find linguistic is not enough. When you have linguistics, it's not enough. You have to go to genetic. Genetic is not enough. You have to go to archaeology. Then it's not enough. Blah blah blah. In fact, you have to go to anthropology. That's all. My main question is, do you see, in a global perspective, of course, not on the detail, what is the main difference between a Moken and a Bajau? Do you see any difference? Just like that, as a question, even if you don't know the Moken very well, even if I don't know the Bajau very well, because it's a question every people in Malaysia or Indonesia ask me, are the Moken Bajau? Can we call Moken Bajau? I don't know how to answer that. Because it could be, yes, why not this migration go to Rio Lenga and then go further north? Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Who knows? The language, the origin is the same and so on. So it's a difficult question. And I know that there was a conference, international conference, but a long time ago, maybe 30 years ago, made by the Malaysian university, National University, who say that they are all Bajau. Well, no matter where they came from, Burma or Indonesia, they call them Bajau. And that's it. But nobody takes that into account and they just leave it. I think it's because it was a Malaysian conference and nobody was interacting with the Western big shot like we have. But the question remains, are they the same? So we will have Benjamin, who will speak about the linguistic. We will have Sater, who will give a framework of all this dispersion, I hope, of the Bajau, you, and of course, the Suku, we have to, but you know, I would like this link to be more solid. And the evidence can only be, as you tell just now, the Rio people, the Suku, the region, at least not maybe not the people themselves, but the region you mentioned, yes, could be the center. When you say that Malacca and the Malay may be the center, for me, it's the beginning of the story, because before, I don't know. I know until Malacca's story, the history, but after you cannot know everything, it's too big. So I would agree, of course, that it came from Malacca and Spurs, but it's hard to prove. I tell you that for the paper, because that will be much more interesting to have people who can compare with Sater, Benjamin, you on this square. And then on the Western cone, we have enough people. But for the Western, Eastern one, you have only 3. But thank you very much. It was very enlightening.
Are there any other questions before we move on the third presentation of Fabienne?
Yes, always me with my hand raised here. Can you see it, Maxime?
No, I can't see it because I'm not the
I
Zoom
understand.
session moderator. That's why.
Okay. So just a detail. I was interested when you talk about the co-management and obstacles of co-management, and you talk about terms, and you say conservation and protected area are problems, are obstacles in co-management. Could you be a bit more clear about what you were, what's behind this?
Yeah, actually, the term of the conservation that we know, I mean, the government and also the NGOs bring into the community, they always start with the protected area, or maybe the target to conserve or preserve some areas or some endangered species or some kind of plants. But in the view of the local communities like Bajau or the customary coastal communities, actually they have their own term how to define this conservation and also how to define the protected area based on their knowledge. In my study case in Bajau people in Wakatobi, the project that brings the conservation and protected area into the community always fails because they always put all of the guidelines from the big organization or from the government. They put it into the detail, but in the action, it's totally different. And the community, didn't understand by themselves how to define this conservation. Otherwise, you come to the community and define it based on the community definition, how to run the conservation in the one line.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So Fabienne, it's your turn.
Ah oui, okay. I have to open my PowerPoint. How to share.
Big button at the, yeah.
You see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so my presentation would be about museums things, and so it's about orality and nomadism, and the idea, well, for me and for, well, I'm a museologist, and so this is how I was involved in the project with Jacques and Maxime. So, sorry.
Could you put your presentation in presentation mode? The small button. There are 3 buttons on the. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Yes. So I'm talking. So sorry. How do you spend the second one? So when I was involved in the project as a museologist and as a researcher in museology, I was thinking, I was asking questions, and I was looking for challenges in museology. And I was asking what values are compatible with the creation of a museum in its current definition. So the question to Maxime and Jacques was, okay, they want, or you want a museum, but what for? And so here you can read the list of the main ideas they told me. So to make known to as many people as possible the profound structure of deeply original and inspiring nomadic society with a very strong ideology and non-violence and non-accumulation and so on. And they want also to make people understand the respectful interactions between Burmese and Moken, of course, and they wanted to be involved in the development of local touristic activities, and they wanted to strengthen the cultural potential of the region, and of course raise awareness about the environmental issues of the archipelago. So my involvement and my first field works in Tenasserim began in 2015, and so okay, why do they want a museum? They told me, and for museologists, you have to question yourself, and you have to question the field and the people about many things. For example, what is the Moken identity, or where is it, or how to connect this society with its museum representation, or how to prevent the folklorization of this nomadic people. And then how to conciliate the functions and functioning of museum with the nomadic ideology. And at last, how can a concrete museum be meaningful for the Moken people? So I put those on those slides, 3 pictures of museum. So on the first one, it's a living museum that I've studied in Namibia, where people are folklorized, and where the Nama people are used to for fun, and so I had a lot of experience on this type of museum. And I show, so this is a picture in the middle here, because when we talk about museum, we think about something not flexible. We think about hoarding, we think about keeping things and immobility and so on. And when we talk about museum, we have this kind of picture. This one has been taken in Apido, but you could have it anywhere. So with things and without connection to the real life, or to the real people. So let's try to understand what was the process for us as a museologist, for us museologists. So we had collection, of course, a collection created by Jacques Ivanov and Maxime. And so we have already objects, and we have recordings, audio recordings, we have ethnographic films, we have photos and so on. So we began to think not only about the storage, but about the inventory and the digital inventory. So it's a huge work that we began to do. It was a bit difficult at the beginning, and Jacques was again, how to say it, was again solicited to give us information, and then to reread and to re-understand the huge amount of elements we could use for the museum, photos and so on. And to do this digital inventory, we need a kind of all-terrain digital inventory that could allow us to adapt to technical changes for the future. We had to think of that. And so when we talk about museum, we think about communication. So we know that in Burma, and from what I have seen during those last 5 years, I have seen many times the elders transmitting or continuing their ritual practices and transmitting their knowledge, which is supported by intermarriage and also children. One of the question I wanted to dig and to try to understand. The museum is an external concept for the Moken, and this externality could be an obstacle for the museum, as we believe we could do. For them, museum is a kind of godang, a kind of warehouse, from what Jacques told me. And so one of the decisive step on the way of a museum, of my involvement, of our involvement in a museum creation, was the concept of toke. And so to become a toke, so a spokesman of the Moken culture for others, it must be invested with a legitimacy that can be withdrawn. So this legitimacy was given to Jacques many years ago, as he became a toke, and so you can see here is one of his Lobung representation. And the other way, and the other question we had about, we had to take into account was participation. We want to create, the need was to create a museum but the idea was to involve them. And as you say in the presentation just before mine, we didn't want to have to create something without real participation. So we have the Tokay as a spokesman, as a legitimate spokesman, but we wanted also to involve to involve the Moken as they could benefit from their participation. Okay. So, and when we talk about museum, we talk about research. So one of the other decisive step on the way to the museum was the work that Jacques and Maxime did and produced for many years, but not only what was published and so on, but also what I was really, and we were really interested by the work they did on the Moken social space map. And as Jacques explained you last time, this Moken social space map, as we call it, maps, has the idea is, the idea is cultural mapping and preservation of the sites of importance in the archipelago, and there's acknowledgement and the understanding of the archipelago through the Moken language, as you show already. Understand what does represent the archipelago for the Moken and what is their vision of the territory, and also give back part of Tanitari, history through their oral literature and anthropological work, and seek mutual acknowledgement of the Moken and Burmese history. So on this base, we began to elaborate, to structure the museum. So it would be a museum in the archipelago, not on the mainland. It could be a real museum. It could be a museum with exhibition. It could be a museum with shop and storage places. And it could be a museum with shop and with a visitor center, but it could be also, and it should be, a kind of exploded museum with different, well, it could be in the archipelago. So that was one of the first idea we had, and so we, as it's much easier to create a website. So we did a mokenalive.org website. But we keep the idea that a museum is made for preservation, for communication and research. And but to go and to go further, to work, and we need to do museological experimentation and test. And one of them was, the idea was to test ethnic value of musealia. So as I told, rather than relying on a set of ethnological objects in a society where mobility, non-accumulation is our values of importance, we decided that the maps will be the privileged means of for the museum, for the narrative of the museum. But yes, but how? So we decided, with the help of an NGO, to create an exhibition as an experimental test. To answer a number of questions and of museological questions, both theoretical and practical. And with those questions was related to the narrative choice and was concerning visiting practices, the adequacy between supply and demand, the museographic and graphic principle to be adopted, the development of new forms of narration, the use of digital practices, heritage and so on. What is heritage and so on? So we had the opportunity with Oikos as and of Oikos. Oikos is an NGO, and so we did an experimental exhibition in the archipelago in 2019. And so we decided to focus, of course, on the map and to create links with between the map and complex panels with few text and logo connected with the map. And as you can see, there was no artifact. And yes, so what did we learn and from the reception of this exhibition by the Moken? So I don't want to, so to be more precise for this exhibition, we had, as I told, no ethnographic object. We use a lot of many different kind of photos, large format, small, old pictures, and pictures of sacred of cemeteries, as photos of mountains and where ancestors are living. We use also animation, as I can show you here, this animation, and not it's just one of the animation we display. We use also, we test also presence of books, presence of leaflets, and we use also local resources. So we try to use this small exhibition as a test for various techniques, support and subject. So, sorry, where is this? Ah, ça passe pas la suite. So we did two openings for this exhibition, one focused only for the Moken, and one with officials, Myanmar official. And what was very interesting for us, we had many Moken who came for the opening, for the first opening. We count them, they come from different islands, different subgroups. There were about 100. And what was interesting also, it was a difference between the different attitudes the NGO had in front of the Moken with the Moken opening and with the official opening. In the Moken, during the Moken opening, the people from the NGO were quite distant. And during the official opening, the NGO were the people from the NGO were present. So it was something bizarre for me. So let's go back to the reception from the Moken. As you can see, they were very interested. And here you have only some pictures of the opening. And so we also have a video, 360-degree video that help us to analyze the reception as we do in museology. We try to see the different kind of reaction, women, young, old, what was the most interesting, what do they avoid, and so on and so on. And from this, we have been taken out of our museal comfort zone, and that means that spirituality, territory, and orality was the thing that, comment dire in English, was really important for it appears during the exhibition that the most interesting displays and artifact was connected with spirituality, with territory, and with orality. And and when we talk about orality, we talk about alternate songs, which appear to me, and which appeared for a long time to Jacques and Maxime, to be the soul, the recipe, it's appeared to be the soul of the Moken. And as you can see on that picture, we had some very, very emotional moment when we display alternate song to the Moken. So that was in 2019. And when we came, in 2019 and 2020, those experiments, and unfortunately, the COVID pandemic and the sanitary containment affect our work, affect in a way, but in fact, it didn't affect so much as it gave us the time to work more on alternate song and to take into account global changes in cultural and social practices, and also to think about pandemic and climate change. So step one for during that that pandemic, how can I say, pandemic confinement, we spent a lot of time working together with Jacques and Maxime on internet, on Skype, and to re-listen to the alternating or alternate song. I don't know how to say, but I think it's alternate song. So we re-examine, we work again on the classification and definition, what is a tale, myth, epic, song, and so on. And we try to re-examine the ontogenèse. For me, it could be kind of phylogeny between the different tales, Gamma, Nyonya, and the different one. And from the work we did, and from the work that Jacques and Maxime did, as a museologist, I think that the alternate songs are really the art of the Mokenitude. And I wanted to read this quotation wrote by a very famous museologist who is Hugues de Varine, who remind us that the museum, well, he was talking about eco-museum, but we can accept this for all museum. The museum must be and remain an expression of the community, an indigenous product, to be recognized by the community as its own property and its own instrument. It must therefore speak the language of the community. It must be rooted in the living culture of the people, and by language, I mean not only the spoken and written language, but also the means of communication that are easily understood by all members of the community. So you know, and I hope you understand what we wanted to do is we wanted to incorporate, to use this the soul of the Mokenitude, I mean the alternate song, to create the narrative of the museum. So we spend a lot of time with different kind of drawings, and on the base of the main field of the Moken social space as defined by Jacques and Maxime. And and we also were very inspired by work made by Professor Revel about orality. And so yes, we spent time. So I just wanted to show you those drawings to that we did for discussion. And then we design the conceptual outline of the future exhibition in future, for example, the future museum. There will be, of course, a temporary exhibition. There will be a permanent exhibition, but what about? It will be an exhibition about the social space of the Moken. And as this social space is a combination of songs and people and places and history and so on. So that would be a kind of unusual display connecting alternate song and places, different places of the archipelago. So it will be a kind of immersive display, but we have to think that we will be in the archipelago. And so we have to think about something sustainable and so on and so on. We don't forget this. And then we will have some example of related to the technique, to the sacred things, to the religion, and to the kinship. And we suggest to have a place where people could listen and to the alternate song, and where they could have more information about their ontogenesis and the meaning and the song. And we will have also a kind of library, media library. And of course, when we talk about the Moken Alive Museum, we talk about not only about this as a permanent, as a building, but also we think about the site on internet. So we will have a hard building in the archipelago and a place on internet. And so the two are complement each other and cannot be conceived independently. And so there are places of communication, places of expression of the Moken, and together they are new place of memory. So this question, tangibility, adaptability, and mobility. And in conclusion, as I remember that we consider them as we consider the Moken as people of poets. And we, to answer to the question, the values of the Moken nourish the whole conception and the whole dynamics and all the principles of the group that we form around this project. And during the work, the last 5 years of work we did with the museological perspective, it seemed that the alternative songs are the art of the soul of the Moken, and it is a map of the Moken social space that made sense for a museum in the archipelago. As I wrote, of course, we have to deal with the reality of what is a museum, and of the need of the museum itself. So, of course, we will not make or build a mobile museum, as it is very, very complex to maintain. And but we want to have but by the presence of a building dedicated to the Moken in the archipelago, we could inscribe them in the history of the archipelago. And it will be, of course, the alternate Moken song that will offer that will lead the visitors. So, but as you have seen during the last year, the future is not predictable. So on the internet, we will continue our exploration of the possibilities and how to involve and to continue to involve the Moken in the maze of the increasingly elaborate digital proposals. And in the context of the social and environmental awareness. The museum here speaks on behalf of the Moken people and is influenced by their practice and desire. So it's okay. But because of this flexibility inscribed, that seems to be inscribed in their mental universe, they should know how to benefit from the advantages of this museum based on orality, both in the short term and in the long term adaptation to new kind of tourists, to new kind of cultural practices and so on. So thank you for listening, and I hope I haven't been too long.
No, it was
c'était parfait.
very much.
Bravo.
I think it's a very good example of, it's not because we are part of the project, no? But it's a good example, I believe, on, I mean, what any project, whether it's a museum or locally managed area, resource management areas should be built. That is from, as Jax told us just before, from the communities, and then maybe finding representatives to deal on a more daily basis about these projects and these issues. But I mean, the one probably the biggest issue is the one of time. Even Burmese people want to rush in and making a Moken museum in every and each island, but according to their own perception of what is interesting in Moken culture. While here we really try to first get out the most for the Moken's benefit and Moken's desire, what should be a museum. Are there any questions for Fabienne? Narumon,
There is a question from the audience,
Okay.
from Helen Brandt.
uh-huh.
She said, can you read from your chat box or not?
Yeah. So it says,
Okay.
thank you for the wonderful presentations. To what extent do you find cultural tourism or heritageization of the Moken and the Bajau to be contradictory given the stateless status of many such groups and their invisibility in the provision of state services? Thank you. Want
To me. Oh, sorry. Could you repeat the question? I was not listening.
So how does cultural tourism, for instance, for the Moken, how is it contradictory or not with the status, which is often a stateless population, the fact that they are generally invincible to state authorities? So how does cultural tourism fits in this context?
Stateless, I don't know if this is so well. From what we have seen in the Surin National Park, we have seen that the Moken play with the tourists. I don't know if we can say that, Narumon, but what we have seen last year, 2 years ago, in the islands, in Surin, it was. I mean, we have seen from many different experience all over the world how a local population can play with tourist expectations. And so, of course, if tourists want to have, for example, in Namibia, if tourists want to have naked women, okay, let's be naked and give us money. I mean, it's just a kind of, and so they can benefit until they are in charge of their own representation and until they know how to use, if they know how. What is a museum? A museum is a huge box that many people do not understand how it works and the power it has to for authorities and for many future visitors. I have seen that also in Namibia with local Himba. Himba are a community, a nomadic community who lives in the north of Namibia. And in the National Museum in Windhoek, in the capital, there are displays about the Moken, not the Moken, sorry, the Imba. And in this, and the Imba came to visit this museum, and they were really, really angry at because those representation was not made with them. And so they began, it's really important that people can understand what is a museum, how we manage a museum, and so on. I don't know if I really answered to the question. I'm sorry, but
Actually,
I don't think.
it brings very a lot of different elements regarding statelessness. I know there have been several reports. One from I think Global Human Rights Watch, which was entitled "Stateless at Sea." There has been more recently a report from the Burma Human Rights Network, I think, dealing also with Moken statelessness. But if we take, the case of the Moken, in Thailand, they receive citizenship, right? In Myanmar, it's not systematic, but a lot of Moken people are acknowledged as one of the many different ethnic groups, even though doesn't really reflect their origins. They have been given access to citizenship as well. But I think, like Wengki underlined about the case of Bajau and natural resource management, that they're given some kind of recognition, but not necessarily empowered to exercise this right to be a state person or to be a citizen. And also, like Wengki underlined, most often authorities are very keen to put this very folkloric population at the forefront as flagship of tourism. But on the other side, they don't recognize them customary rights on resource management and everything. So, to my point of view, cultural tourism can do no good if there is, as Fabienne said, if there is no involvement of these communities and if they can't do their own choices on how they want to be represented and involved in such cultural tourism. So that's it. Maybe
If we avoid if we avoid folklorization, if we find, the idea we want to develop for the Moken Alive Museum is to display alternate songs, to use alternate songs to show how a community can manage its own territory. And so it could become a kind of example how for sustainable management. And for in that perspective, it could help Moken to become not only a touristic flagship or whatever, but it could help Moken to become a kind of inspiring society because of the future that we will have to face. To be adaptable, that will be our biggest challenge for the next future. And because of the changing climate, I remember that we will have to, the Moken are islander. And so what does it mean? Where is, because of the rise of the sea levels that will come quite in the next 20 years. In my opinion, this museum will, this kind of museum, not only based on artifact and on the old traditions, but that will display the tools of, je sais pas si je suis claire, mais bref, the tools of renewal, of an eternal renewal. That could be something that will help the Moken.
And as you said, at least for this museum, Moken Alive Museum project, it's not geared only toward cultural tourism. Before all, it's a mean for the Moken to express what is our identity and to find in that case kind of recognition also from the Burmese authorities and Burmese government. Does someone want to add something? Or
yeah, maybe a little. I'd like to get in touch with Helen for a while now, so I'm really glad that you listen and then post the question. Maybe just briefly about tourism on Surin Island. I don't think it's cultural tourism. It's just to go there for most Thai people to look at cultural other and take picture, and that's it. Not much interaction. So I wouldn't consider cultural tourism, apart from some groups like international exchange student that really intended to go there to learn more about the Moken. And about half of the Moken population in Thailand are still stateless. So, you know, about less than half on Surin Island don't have citizenship. I think the problem is that when they get involved in more formal kind of work, like driving speedboat and becoming tourist agency staff, so they couldn't get the full pay like the Thai citizen. So that's the problem. And the labor law doesn't quite cover them as Thai citizens. So I think that's the two main problem. So maybe I just pass on to Wengki for Bajau situation.
Thank you, Ajahn. I think in the context of Bajau, yeah, we're still looking for what kind of cultural tourism that can imply in Bajau. Since the Bajau, yeah, have some project about the tourism, also the museum that we know until now is, yeah, it could be like an unsuccessful story of the Bajau, of the project related to the tourism in Wakatobi. Yeah, for me, what I observe in the field that, yeah, we need more appropriate information and then involve academics, yeah, to develop what kind of cultural tourism that we can, yeah, pass to the Bajau people. In terms of the stateless status, in Bajau, in Wakatobi, I think we don't have problem with the citizenship, but the problem is mostly coming about the religious status, because Indonesia, we need to put your religion in the box. But since 2019, the government, yeah, the government decided to, yeah, we can blank that column in our ID card. So now, yeah, there is more right for the Bajau people to use their cultural belief, or even to make it blank based on their belief. Thank you.
thank you. And maybe as a teaser for the next sessions of the webinar, I think that Narumon and together with Achan Supong, we will be also discussing that access to citizenship is not necessarily, does not necessarily provide access to empowerment of this citizenship and decision-making power. So stay tuned for the next sessions. So is that it? No more questions or comments? We are done?
La connexion est ainsi, il m'écrit.
Yeah. Do you want to add something, Jacques? Okay, bad connection. So maybe that's a sign we should end this this session now. Thank you very much to all the
We can't
speakers
hear you anymore.
audience. And see you next week, same day, Thursday, same time, for our presentation. Thank you very much all.
I say goodbye. I can't hear you. My microphone is red.
Okay. So
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good
Merci.
week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Narumon. Thank you,
Thank you.
Wengki. Thank you,
Bye, bye.
Wilodja. Thank you, Maxine.
Thank you.